Initiate release sequencer. On my mark. 5,
We're on express elevator to hell. Going down.
2, 1. Mark.
Welcome back to the Resupply with me, guy next door.
Me, a guy who was actually at the random draw tournament, DK.
And me, Than, who was stuck at work and not at the random draw tournament.
Ooh.
Yeah, boo. Bringing you your first double tap of Space Marines and Laser Force for 2025. Oh boy, we've got some homegrown Prime subs coming through. Go us. Huzzah.
Yay.
Hi to you boys. Hello Twitch. I hope everyone has had an excellent Christmas, New Year's break. Let's get the hype train rolling in. Bob DeBuilder, 53 months. Holy shit, dude. That's awesome. Nice to see you. Thank you for your support, brother. Smalling McSmall. Oh goodness me. 55 months. Oh man. We're at that hype train. What a way to start the year.
These people are putting me to shame. I actually have a very small financial interest in the channel. So,
how's it going, boys? How the hell are you? It's nice to see you. Welcome to 2025. I mean, we're already basically a month in, but
I mean, half a month in, it's fine.
yeah. How's the
fine.
start? How was the break? Did you enjoy not having to see my face for several weeks?
well, it was a hell of a lot better this last week since I got to actually play laser tag.
Oh, yeah.
That part was pretty good. Other parts of the break didn't really feel like much of the break, but that's pretty common for me. Like in between school terms, the winter holidays don't really feel all that relaxing because you just have all these other obligations and shit you have to deal with.
Winter.
But yeah. So I guess I should say the December holidays, December and early January holidays, since much of our audience is in the Southern Hemisphere, and it ain't winter there. Weird as that is.
No,
Weird how the whole planetary axis, impacts things.
Science, man.
Terrible.
And for your up-to-date science information, come on over to the Resupply.
No, definitely don't. Definitely don't do that. That seems like a terrible idea.
So on the plus side, I got to play laser tag this last week. On
Sick.
the minus side, speaking of sick, I think I'm coming down with the various laser tag tournament crud that was going around during the last week. I am worried I'm in the early stages of that. And my left hip / mid gluteal muscle is mega fucked, and I'm limping around all over the place today. So
That's such a weird.
had a good time playing for a week, but I feel like a 40-year-old man who went and played laser tag for a week.
What did you call that muscle? Your central
Glute.
The mid part of my glute. The middle portion of laser tag's ass is kind of hurting.
Well, you got beat up there bad. That's a real shame. Lucy, 43 months. Thank you so much.
Got a nice little heating pack here, so we're gonna apply some heat here. Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Down with the sickness, you could relate. Oh no.
Yep, you are definitely getting old, bro. I'm sorry. It's life.
Well, look, I've had an excellent break. Managed to catch up with some overseas
Good
peeps.
for
It's
you.
been fucking sweet. Those Q's balls really kill the cheeks. How are the knees though? The knees must be feeling all right. Running on that cloud of a floor they have up over there in Western New York.
Yeah, no real problem with the knees, ankles, shins, any of that.
Yeah.
That's feeling good. I changed shoes, changed insoles before I went, but even having usually do that in tournaments, I feel like my feet were less sore than they would otherwise be. So
yeah,
definitely a big fan of that turf.
Yeah. It's the best. Real quick, I'm gonna give a quick recap as to what we've been up to. No streams, obviously. We've been pretty quiet here on the channel. just kind of taking the time to actually chill and reset and have a nice break. I caught up with Lucy and Lucy's daddy over the break. They came and hung out over this side of the world, and it was very nice to see them. Very nice to meet Lucy's daddy in the flesh. Also had dinner with a blast from the past. I caught up with Mental this week, the other day actually, and we haven't seen each other since I think 08 or 09. I can't remember. But
08 sounds right.
Yeah, I think it was 08, but 09 was I think 09 was Brisbane.
That was a Brisbane tournament, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you were both there. So we'll say since 09.
Yeah, but it's obviously
lights
been
go boom.
a little while. Slingo Baby. Oh, that's a real shame. I was looking forward to catching up with Slingo Baby in Discord, but thank you for the follow. Appreciate it. Mental is alive. He's thriving, although he did. It's so funny because we haven't seen each other for years and years and years, and he brought up his absolute disdain as to what happened in the 2008 Nationals again. Just living rent free for decades. It's been great. What the fuck is Hype Chest? Get out of here, Hype Chest.
I'll hype your chest.
Ew. Chat, what have you guys been up to? Hope you guys enjoyed the break. Hope you haven't missed us too much. I can't imagine so.
Or you could have missed us a lot, and that would be fine too.
You do you. You live your best life. Now, for anyone who doesn't know, there is the world of laser tag centric podcasts is crowded. It's a very crowded space. There's another channel putting out content, and let's be honest, it's not very good.
True, because it's excellent. It's more than very good.
Because it's a
lot better than the slop we churn out. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. There's only a little bit of jealousy on this end. Head to that link if you want probably a I don't know, at least 50% more thoughtful take on ECT, even though none of those people went to the tournament.
Yeah, I was gonna say none of them were there. I'm not gonna say that you're getting the best objective, unqualified truth of what happened, but you literally have infinitely more people on your podcast than they had on their podcast who were actually at the tournament.
True, but me and Fan dragged the curve way down.
We always do.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's got to be the anchor. In this case, it's me and that guy. But yeah, you guys just got done with ECT, obviously, and that's the thing that we're going to be playing.
This lovely shirt that Autumn and Aiden made, and was available for purchase during the tournament, and many people did partake in that. Along with lots of other great merch that was out there, including, oh crap, I didn't bring it in here, but a pair of Space Marine sweats that are definitely going into the rotation now, that are going to be my favorite winter pants, as long as I don't wear them out too much.
So, I don't know about you guys. I don't know if you know this about me. I love me some merch.
Really?
But I love that the community as a whole gets behind, like, the creatives in our scene and actually supports them with buying rad stuff that, honestly, nobody else would buy. Like, nobody else cares about, because it's for us. And so the more you guys can get them behind supporting those ventures that are part of our community, I think the better off. But yeah, I love me some merch.
For sure. I do not believe that they have anything like an online store just yet. But who knows? That could be something that happens
I hope so.
down the line. And if so, I would definitely hype that. Because at least with the possible exception of the tournament shirt that you did for 2023 Aquanats, because I really do love that shirt. I think this is probably my favorite just event shirt that's been done. Like there are team shirts that I probably like even more than this one, because they're specific to your team and your theme and all that kind of stuff. But it's like just a tournament shirt that lots of people get. I really, really like this one. Yeah. And I feel like it kind of captures the spirit of what the event was all about.
Yeah, it's.
And if you look at it in a mirror, it says Ward Modnar on it, which sounds like a really cool D&D character that you should make next time you campaign.
uh, seems like only yesterday you were trying to flog off some merch. I was literally pushing merch to the Laserforce Disc Golf Association yesterday, or at least the idea of merch. But that's we'll deal with that on a later episode. But yeah, I hope they do. I hope like people get in the spirit of creating cool stuff. Obviously, like profiting from some of the stuff is cool. For the most part, I don't know about anyone else, but when I create stuff, I generally just cover the costs, and really only make the stuff because I want it, and it becomes cheaper to make if everyone else wants it too. So, hopefully, people can create some really cool stuff, and the rest of the community can get in behind them, and yeah, support their creative endeavors. Right, let's get into ECT, unless there's anything else that we've missed that we want to get into.
I mean, we definitely need a long, detailed breakdown of Verizon's corporate structure and why Sam was not having fun at work last week. That always really gets the audience humming. So.
I mean, you know what? One minor story because it just kind of encapsulates what last week was.
Credits.
Bam, done. No, so yesterday was, finishing planning and presenting our plan of what we're gonna do to management, and I did mine, and it was very half-assed because it just was. And the person facilitating the thing is like, so do you have any risks for not getting stuff done? And just immediate response was, just generalized organizational chaos. Which is why work has been a stressful ball of garbage for the last several months, because it is nothing but organizational chaos.
I'm pretty sure
that was an amazingly good passive-aggressive comment too.
He really didn't appreciate that comment. It was the reaction to that was very much what I was hoping for, which was kind of indignant.
Hey, fuck you, man.
But yeah, so that was kind of that was the high point of my week. So that should give you some idea of how my week went.
Yeah. New Year's period.
Laser tag does sound better than that.
Yeah, it sure does.
Better.
Well, thank you for that update. We appreciate it.
And that man's name, Ward Modnar.
I was gonna say, is that Ward Modnar's like one of his special abilities? He casts organized chaos.
I mean, he's got the personality of an eggplant, so probably.
What a sick burn. Josh and Tham
and his cat wants some energy drink.
Josh and Tham been denied by the way.
It's not energy drink today. It's Gatorade today, or imitation Gatorade today.
Oh.
The energy drink of the 1990s.
Correct.
before if we just started sprinkling cocaine and various other substances into
what is
weird
taurine? I don't know. Put it in. All right. Right. Let's talk about Laserforce.
Yeah, way more fun.
Corporate shit
way
out
more
of here.
fun.
Right. So you guys went to Syracuse in the middle of winter.
Went to balmy Syracuse, where when I landed, it was about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, which is a nice round zero for those of you who use appropriate metric units. So for most of the week, it was anywhere between it was usually in between about -5 and 0 in terms of Celsius units for the week we were there.
Cold.
It didn't snow too terribly much. There was only one day where kind of had to shovel out the drive. But at least this time I had a real snow shovel instead of a dustpan like that one time in Lakeland.
That's helpful.
Yeah, it's because they know how to do winter there, right?
Yeah, more or less. And the hosts of this Airbnb were nice enough to have the snow shovel in a very obvious place. So made it a little bit easier.
Yeah. But okay, so it wasn't as bad as it could be though.
No, because they had pretty serious snow the weekend before. Because upstate New York and all the other areas around the Great Lakes get sometimes the lake effect snow, where they will just have a meter, 2 meters of snow just dumped on them in the course of a weekend, and it's just kind of crazy. And the temperatures are supposed to drop there next week, so it'd be more like -10, -12, something like that.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that even though upstate New York in January in general is a terrible idea, you guys basically got like the 1 week theme where it was less terrible
Yeah,
than it
it
would
was
have
fine.
otherwise been.
It was fine.
It's fine.
It was fine. It was a good time to be indoors playing laser tag. Let's just leave it at that.
We had sun and heat for our disc golf tournament, and it was awesome. Suck it, dick. Right. How was the gameplay? Fill us in. Obviously, we weren't there.
Gameplay was good overall. So just as a recap, because I know we talked about this a little bit, I think, on the last show that we did, but we kind of thought we might do one more before ECT, but then scheduling conflicts happened and all that. But we had 36 players in attendance. They were all ranked into tiers. So we were going to take the top 6 players, the next 6 players, the next 6 players, so on and so forth. So that way we'd have, 6 different categories of where players were. There was a committee of 5 of us who helped to rank the players, and we just took what the consensus rankings were. In general, they were pretty close to each other. There were obviously differences. People had differences of opinion that skewed the rankings to one side or another. So some of us might have had players in one tier higher or lower than they actually ended up. But I think by the end of it, nobody was really more than one tier away from where I would have had them ranked at the absolute most. And I think when it came to the week, there was really only one person, maybe 2, who really were outliers in terms of they did significantly better or worse than the tier in which they were ranked. Most notably, I would say Ender, who's a Southern California player, who I and the other people who were ranked people knew very little about. All we knew was that we had some players from Southern California who'd never played a tournament, so they always kind of ended up in the bottom tier by default. But Ender played significantly better than basically any other bottom tier player. Like, he honestly, I think, could have been ranked probably into maybe the tier 4 by the end of the week. He has really good instincts, really solid play.
Whereabouts in SoCal? Like, what would be the closest site, previous site?
I assume it would be as an invasion player from San Marcos,
Right.
but has definitely gone to some of the events that were hosted at Lost Worlds.
Oh, yeah.
None of which I've made it to, but they did play probably about a half dozen times over a span of months, where they got people from the old Chula Vista site, from the invasion site, and a lot of people from Sacramento, and even other places like St. George and Loveland came out and played a few games out there. So some of them had more knowledge of these players, but even people who had been to some of those trips, I don't know necessarily had a whole ton of intel about some of the people who went. So I know there was some head scratching, and there were people who disagreed with where the tiers were broken, and that's fine. Like, again, not everybody on the committee had the same opinion either, so that wasn't out of step with anything. But overall, I would have to say I think we got it pretty close to right. A lot of people were of the opinion that the kind of top 12 players, so people in tiers 1 and 2, that was really more kind of like one large tier anyway. It's just like, well, let's give a slightly more precedence to people who have a lot more experience in that arena. So Syracuse players like Beans and Cody and Blackhammer, and then people like Brew, who, although they don't regularly play in Syracuse, like, they have more games in Syracuse than a lot of other players, a lot of other sites. So that was kind of what went into that. But there were definitely people who were kind of steals in their ranks. Like, I and a number of other people felt that Disco Monkey and Autumn were really great pickups in their tiers. Disco being in tier 4 and Autumn being all the way down in tier 5. Like, you could make an argument for each of them to be moved up a tier. But it was funny in the run up to the tournament, a lot was talking about, well, yeah, there are definitely people who are probably, like, if we redrew them, they could have ended up in this tier or this tier, but they ended up being on the border, and they fell maybe one lower than you would otherwise think. But that's just kind of how it happens when you arrange things. It's like, yeah, but one team probably won't draw like all of the players who are at the top of their bracket. But that's exactly what happened. Is that this team ended up on the same team. That was the Brew and Evil team, the team that ended up coming in second. And it doesn't surprise me at all that they came in second, just based on getting some very favorable pickups in those kind of mid tiers that really improved the strength of their team. And I would say that was equally true for the winning team as well. The Aiden Kodama and Assassin team that Ender, the other Southern California player I mentioned, who was also on. So they were a really deep, really versatile team. So even though the randomizer is one of the biggest factors in the overall tournament, it doesn't surprise me at all that the teams that came in first and second. And probably looking at it beforehand, I would have picked them to come in top two in some order, but it wouldn't have shocked me, right? If they got some really bad rolls and they ended up in fourth and fifth.
Right.
The organizational chaos of it really sometimes makes a difference in how the rankings can shake out, because that's the other big difference about this tournament format, is that before every game there is a set of dice and little boxes next to the bases in Syracuse, and people draw them out of there, and that tells you what your position is for the game. So it is completely random what people will draw. It's not matched in any sense. There's not an enforced rotation. So theoretically, everybody should get a similar number of 3-hit scout resupply games. But as we've discovered during the week,
that does not
that's
happen.
not necessarily the case. I mean, it's not that big a sample size. There's going to be some weird skewed data that was in there. And just to give you a sample of that, the tier 6 players in particular drew a disproportionately high number of 3-hit games that made a lot of the games actually kind of interesting, because in a lot of cases they were drawing them against each other.
Right.
Like cases where they would draw a 3-hit game and the other team had, their tier 1 and 3 players on 3 hits. Those were less interesting.
Yeah.
It's funny how that works.
So since every team played at least 24 games, I just took the first 24 games that people played and looked at the different teams. So of the people who are on tier 6, Hallange, who is one of the tier 6 players, drew 10 3-hit games out of 24 games, so a little bit above what you expect. Minette drew 13 out of 24. Ebo Mike drew 14 out of 24. Ender drew 16 out of 24.
Goodness.
And Grack, my teammate, drew 17 out of 24 games as a 3-hit.
Jesus.
In the event. The only person who actually got below the expected number of games was Anchovy, who was on that second place team. So in addition to having strong personnel, they also got some fairly favorable roles in getting some of their higher ranked players into the 3-hit positions more often. But yeah, of the games that were played, a total of 53% of the games played had one of the tier 6 players playing a 3-hit role.
That's
so
awesome.
That was kind of entertaining. But I think it honestly did make for a really good learning experience for a lot of the players, either as a learning experience for newer tournament players like Hallange, Ebo Mike, Anchovy, and Ender, but also for Grack, I think it was a good experience in terms of being in unfamiliar situations where you do have responsibilities in the game and not feeling like you're afraid of that, or feeling like that's too stressful of a situation, because you have a whole team to support you and everybody is organized around the same goal. So it's, in some cases, for the newer or less experienced or lower ranked players, it's kind of exposure therapy, just pushing them into the 3-hit roles more often. So that was actually, it made it interesting and fun in a lot of ways, because it wasn't just one team that was drawing really skewed results. It was like, it seems weird that these players are drawing so many 3-hit games, right?
Well, just on that, and I just want to reiterate, because the thought popped into my head, so of course I got to voice it. For those who, these tournaments are the tournaments that are more so for player development and also for fun. And we've talked about this in the past, but Nats isn't the place for those things. These regional events are where newer players should hopefully get the opportunity to test themselves in a higher competitive situation. And like you say, for the most part, those lower ranked players getting to play 3 hits in highly competitive games. That's what these tournaments are for. It's not Nats. We've had people sort of kind of bring that up in the past and be like, look, we should be developing players here and blah blah blah. Nah. if we as a scene are able to have multiple regional events a year, and it's a little less common down this side of the world, but obviously you guys generally have at least one a year outside of Nats in the States.
Historically, yeah.
Yeah, that's what they're for. So, yeah, just thought I would reiterate that for. I mean, most people listening to this are probably in the same boat, but
Yeah. I think other than the COVID years, I think last year was the first time in a while that we didn't have an event outside of Nats. Although we had lots of those mega members nights.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that was kind of a swings and roundabouts thing there.
Yeah.
Like we were doing events where people that wouldn't normally get 3-hit games in competitive games were getting 3-hit games in competitive games
Yeah.
because of the nature and variety of
and building experience at the field that they were going to be playing at Nats.
That's right.
which
Yeah.
is also really helpful as well. I think that made that a better event.
Yeah.
Also, but yeah, the atmosphere is definitely different than at a Nats. It is less stressful. It is still competitive,
Yeah.
and I think people still were honing their competitive edges in this event. But it was a really good social atmosphere, and
Awesome.
nobody everybody has frustrations. That happens. It's part of life. It's just a human thing. But
Yeah.
nothing like ever boiled over into, oh my God, people are shouting at each other. And I thought it was particularly good that in spite of the fact that we had, the quote unquote weaker players drawing so many 3-hit games, people were not getting on their cases or yelling at them or expecting them to do more than they are capable of doing. But there were lots of opportunities for coaching of, hey, when you do this one thing, like try standing over at this angle so you can watch these two different directions at once, or hey, make sure you backtrack when this happens. So there was a lot more opportunities for that sort of engagement and that kind of coaching. And it was really great that I really think I saw that on every team, that there was effort being made to actively coach and develop and try to assist people who were either less experienced in the arena or people who were just less experienced in tournaments overall, because it was the first tournament in quite a while for a number of the players who were there.
That's so good. That's what they should be. And it's awesome to see like veteran players do that for newer players. And also, players that are kind of in that mid-range doing it for newer players as well.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm looking at the teams. How many players were on each side? There seems to be like a lot. Obviously, there's players marked as mercs, but how many did each team have roughly? Was it still 6?
Yeah, it was a full 6 players that were drafted. We had exactly 36 players,
right?
Who were registered for the tournament. The unfortunate thing was that people basically started dropping by the end of day 1 for a number of reasons. It was just largely either illness, in the case of Raz and Ace, who are brothers who live in the same house. So Raz went down with the sickness on the second day, and then the third day, Ace messaged us and was like, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to make it anymore. I got the same thing." I think later that day, Britton started feeling like he was getting a head cold. He actually ended up taking a COVID test, which fortunately came up negative.
Nice.
And then Evil had really bad sciatica on the last day and was not able to complete the tournament.
Right.
I felt really, really bad for him because he had played outstanding up to that point, and had been a real asset to his team. And just also, like that sucks to have that happen just on any day, let alone when you're supposed to be playing in a laser tag tournament.
For sure.
You just have your leg totally cramp up like that. So we had some difficulties, but fortunately there were people who were willing to step in and step up and fill in. I both feel bad for her, but I'm also very happy for Autumn, because she basically by the last day was playing on like 3 different teams, because when Raz and Ace went out, everybody realized that she's the best player remaining in that tier. So everybody was asking Autumn to sub for them constantly. But certainly that's one thing I will definitely say about Disco and Autumn, is that they basically will never turn down the opportunity to play more games. So they're like,
true.
"Oh, you need a sub? Yeah, sure.
Me.
Put me in. No problem.
Yeah.
To the point where Autumn was like even apologizing to teams, where it's like, "Well, my actual team is playing this game, so I can't sub for you. Sorry." It's like, so cheap. Why you have to go help your own team? We really need you for this one, Autumn.
Evo put his back out while eating tenders at Tully's. That's really funny. But also not. That sucks. The bloody cold affecting our old bones.
Might be in some ways.
Them tendies are too good. That's right. That's rough, dude. Well, yeah.
Good to see you, Evil. Hope you're feeling better.
That sucks though. That it's that I guess it's that kind of, it's that time of year, right, where illness is gonna run riot and kind of knock people out. So it's a real shame.
It happens.
Yeah,
And
yes, it does.
and there's definitely a few things running around the U.S. at the moment. So yeah,
Maybe we just, as a community, have really poor immune systems. Maybe, like, I would have thought we'd have developed some sort of tolerance at this point, but maybe not.
A bunch of nerds who spent their childhoods indoors playing with their computers, having compromised immune systems. That doesn't make sense to me.
My skin is
Again, we're
basically
either the jockiest nerds or the nerdiest jocks. I haven't decided which it is. Maybe it's just a cross section of that community. Is what defines the laser tag scene.
That Venn diagram, smack bang in the middle.
Yeah.
Right. So, how did your team do? Well, do you want? Well, instead of that, let's go through the standings, shall we?
Yeah, let's go through the standings. So in 5th and 6th place, technically are the same finish because of the double elimination format. Like they go out at the same time. Beans has it written up that Team Rhea came in 6th. The teams were just named after the 3rd tier players because they're the ones who actually drew the names from each tier to determine what the teams were going to be. So I'll tell you who is on each of the teams. But Team Rhea is listed as 6th place and Team Sweets is listed as 5th place. If you go off of the rankings going from round play, though, I think technically by the strictures of the tournament, Team Sweets would be considered 6th and Team Rhea would be considered 5th. But whatever, they go out at the same time in the double elim. It doesn't matter. They're in the 5-6 ranks in some way. So Team Rhea, that was Rhea from Detroit, Beans from Syracuse, Fear Turkey / Bagel from Loveland, Jerome, who is also from New York, Raz, at least for the first day, from New York. I think he actually left in the second half of the first day, so only played like 4 games or something.
So brutal.
And Halland, who's one of the players from Southern California.
Man, you guys need a site. California needs another competitive site again.
We really do. We really do. It's unfortunate, especially because there's still a fair amount of talent that's out there.
Can we do it Green Bay style and like just have it like player owned? Everyone just kicking $100.
I would love that. That'd be great. I think the biggest issue for that team was just not having the consistency and the fact that they kept having to take a sub because they didn't have Raz all week. So having to take a sub throughout that rank, depending on who they were playing, they just didn't necessarily develop the same kind of chemistry. And then just kind of illness spreading. I think there were other players, Beans and Josiah, were kind of feeling bad on the last day. So I think that definitely impacted them. And I think they got a couple of bad rolls in finals. Really, the teams, even though I think there were 2 that were a little bit better, a little bit the cut above, really the teams did come out, I think, pretty balanced on the whole. So how you rolled in finals ended up being a big consideration.
Yeah.
Because I would say that's even more the case for the Team Sweets. So that was Sweets from California, Snuffles from Utah, listed from being from California. That doesn't make sense. Snuffles from Utah. Black Hammer from New York, Saders from Utah, Azra from Colorado, and Manette from California. Like on paper, all good, experienced players, and that's a really good top 2 in Black Hammer and Snuffles. But they just didn't necessarily draw particularly well in terms of getting their best lineup. And they were somewhat unlucky that the teams that they faced in finals ended up drawing pretty strong lineups overall.
Sorry. My cat is determined to be the star of the show because he's an asshole.
We need one of those technical difficulties screens. That's really funny.
So they got a little unlucky on the last day, I think. And I think Saders also started feeling kind of sick toward the end of the week. So just everybody was having difficulties at one point or another with even their players, either injury free or sickness free, because Azra unfortunately also had a couple collisions during the week that we ended up literally having to put her in a concussion protocol at one point and having some people with a little bit more medical background check on her to make sure she was okay to play. Which she ended up being fine, but first as a joke, but then as a legit thing, we actually got her a helmet that she wore for a couple of games just because she had like hit her head like 2 or 3 games in a row.
Classic Americans thinking the helmet is the answer.
Yep, exactly. Well, what are we gonna do? Stop playing laser tag? I don't think so. So if I have to start playing in knee and elbow pads and a helmet, I'm just gonna do that. I mean, how is it any different? Than's got a knee brace that he plays in all the time. Beans had a cast. A helmet is a upgrade over that, I feel like.
You just put a helmet on his knee because they're basically mushy these days anyway.
That's what the brace is. That's what the brace basically is.
Bro, I got two now.
The brace is the helmet of the knee.
One on each knee. It's fucking dumb. Yeah. Stupid old age. It's bullshit. Anyway, please continue.
Yep. So that was the 5th/6th place teams. 4th place was Team Jackal, or Team No Lives from Jackal, as they ended up being written up. That was a team that I had a lot of good games against over that week, both for and against, but they were just really entertaining games overall. So that was Jackal from New York, Caleb Slaughtermelon from Utah, Britton from New York, Fox from New York, a little bit from New York. So you'll notice a theme here. They had a lot of New York players, and Ebomag from Southern California. So that was a difficult team to play against because they did have so many New York players. So they knew the arena very well. They knew what to do. They knew where to go. And then they had a very powerful offensive weapon in Slaughtermelon that they got to unleash pretty regularly, because he also drew himself a pretty good number of commander games during round play in particular.
Loaded dice.
Unfortunately for them, he didn't draw it as often in finals.
Right.
But so that they ended up going out in 4th. But I thought that was a really solid team. They were fun to play against, and I really enjoyed the kind of drama that came out against that team, because certainly the most memorable games I had from the week, most of them were against that team. They were just entertaining, I think, overall. I might actually do a video breakdown at some point in the next couple of weeks, trying to talk about some of the strategic decisions that were made in those games, because I think they were interesting.
Hell yeah. To Ezra's credit, with all those head knocks, still playing fantastic. No quitting that kid. So
absolutely. She played great. They played great. But there's so many things that are out of your control during that week. People get sick, people get injured. They're things that you want to avoid.
Yeah. Gotta get some better dice though, because those ones sound broken. It's bullshit.
Yeah, they were a little weird. 3rd place was my team. That was Team Strikva. So Strikva from Colorado, Cody from New York, myself, Disco Stew from Detroit, Ace, who was another New York player that we only had for the first half of the tournament, unfortunately, and Greg from California. And she got a lot of 3-hit experience over the end of the week.
What's her kind of thought process on playing 3-hit? Like, I know Autumn is like a very good heavy. What's Grak's kind of take on playing those 3-hit rolls? Because I think she has a fundamentally similar style to Autumn in a lot of ways. Is that if you can get them into a location from which they can defend and just kind of turret, they're very effective defenders. And once they learn their positioning correctly, they're very difficult to break past. That oftentimes ends up being an asset in a way that their mobility sometimes is a liability for them, because both of them have bad spines and are disabled, but they still manage to be very effective tournament players, even though they're disabled. I've said on many occasions, that's really the only thing that hampers them in terms of being ranked higher within the competitive scene, is that in some cases when mobility is a real concern, and that's especially true in arenas like Loveland, where you have to be able to move, you have to be able to bend, you have to be able to make those very quick split-second decisions, that's where mobility issues can really hamper you. But Syracuse, it's a little bit less the case. Like, being fast, being mobile helps, but it's not an absolute necessity. And there are lots of players who, are not necessarily thought of for their quickness, who are maybe slower, more deliberate players, still do really well in Syracuse. So even though we had like 2 people with bad backs on our team, Grak and Disco Stew, who are definitely not the quickest of players, they were still very effective, because once they learned the angles, they learned where to be, learned how to position themselves, their experience, their knowledge of the game, just that those kind of veteran tendencies you develop over time were really helpful. So even though they may not have thought of themselves as being stronger at the 3-hit rolls, just being able to put yourself in those good situations, I think, was helpful and was interesting. And
I think I observed, and I hope she feels the same way, that Grack built, I think, a bit more confidence in playing some of those 3-hit rolls over the span of the week. And like I said, it's not the end of the world, and it's that you don't need to feel like the entire world is on your shoulders in that case, because it really does need to be a team effort in those cases. And that's, I think, part of the other interesting thing about random draw is it puts you in different strategic situations where it's not even so much what am I playing, but what did my team draw? And based on what I'm playing, how can I best kind of alter my play style to favor the kind of draw that we got? And I don't know that all players think of it that way, but I definitely didn't have any kind of like default setting of, oh, I'm playing heavy this game, so this is what I need to do. It's like, well, I'm playing heavy this game. It's going to be a pretty big difference if Grack is playing Commander versus if Cody's playing Commander.
Yeah.
But the way I'm going to play heavy is going to be completely different.
Yeah, for
based
sure.
on who draws the other 3-hit rolls, who's in the resupply, all of those types of things.
Yeah.
And so you have an opportunity to do spontaneous creative things, or to practice really the kind of the craftsmanship that goes into being a complete laser tag player, and not just this is what a commander does, this is what a heavy does, et cetera, et cetera. Like that's where you start, but then it branches out into all kinds of areas. So even though there is, I think, a certain sense in which it kind of sucks that your placement and your fate in the tournament is somewhat left up to chance, it's not absolute fate though. And there were definitely games where you would look at the teams going in on paper and you'd say red team's going to win, and green team ends up winning because they have better communication or better teamwork, or something goes right at the right time in the game. They're able to leverage their advantage and pull ahead of the other team. So it's not like I wouldn't want to play a Nats this way or anything, but I think it's a fun format to have in the rotation. And I think it deserves a place alongside events like duos, like having other just West and East Coast events, and like having rotational tournaments where you have to strategize as to what your lineups are going to be. Because I really enjoy those types of events as well, where it's like, well, you have to play everything, but you can kind of choose in which order you want to play them and who your teammates are going to be. So that obviously requires more time, more bookkeeping, and more thought during the week. And this is kind of just more for funsies event. But you need those too. You need some events that are somewhere above just socials. But that's still like way below where Nats or site locked events are.
Well, they teach situational play, right? Like that's the whole thing with this kind of tournament is learning situations. And actually, I think you're right. I think like that can be triple threat's better, Tucker. Just quietly. I think like that's the most important thing is learning situational play, and this kind of tournament will teach you all sorts of stuff. Like, how do I play heavy with a less experienced commander? How do I play, commander with a brand new heavy? How do all that kind of stuff? Like, how do I play a more defensive commander? How do I play a defensive scout? How all that kind of stuff. And that's really cool. I've not played like full random tournament like that, so I don't quite know what it's like. But I really like that meta. I think that's really cool. It's a cool, like you said, it's a really important thing to have in our arsenal.
Well, and the whole, going back to something you said earlier, and I know we've still got the top two teams to go through, and we'll get there. But the whole thing around that everybody seems like was playing the tournament in the spirit that it was intended, and I just say, like, sure, there's always going to be some frustrating moments, because there's always just going to be some frustrating moments. That's just tag tournaments in general. It's just going to happen. But the fact that, like, I was talking to you throughout the week, I was talking to Baden throughout the week, I was talking with Ray throughout the week, and like there was never a sense in any of the conversations I was having with people where there was any sort of, XYZ people are starting to get a little hot under the collar about everything, and stuff is just it's like there's a boiling point coming, and I don't know how that's going to look. Like, the fact that never happened is such a great such a great advertisement for the scene as a whole, understanding what this event was meant to be.
And most of the times when frustrations came out,
And
it was people
yeah.
being frustrated with themselves.
Yeah, yeah. Which
So-
is it's okay to be that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sometimes you need that. But I think that was also a nice thing is that pretty much everybody had teammates that would go to people and say, hey, you don't have to be so hard on yourself. Like, we're a team. This is a team game. But there was one game after which I really got down on myself. I can talk about that another time. But it happened to a number of players. I don't need to call anybody out. But some people, you know, you kind of get in your own head, this type of event. And if you feel like you're not doing as well as you would like, it can be frustrating. But I don't want to say it's better that people beat up themselves, because I don't want anybody to beat themselves up either, but it's like, it's better than just going out and just blaming other people. Well, we lost this game because you didn't do X, Y, or Z. Like, that wasn't happening.
Yeah, well, that's just...
I love that
like, just
anymore.
dealing with adversity in a constructive... I would say positive way. It doesn't necessarily have to be positive, but more positive than negative. Like, you're right, like, it's as destructive to go out and beat yourself up that it is, you know, to go and beat up your teammates verbally. But yeah, like, because I mean that also has a flow-on effect. If you're the kind of player who really like beats themselves up and then are down, that affects everyone else around you. Everyone either, you know, walks on eggshells, or like they start having a crappy time. Like, being able to deal with adversity in a constructive way is obviously the best way to be. But you know, we go through it, like a lot of us dealing with stuff outside of the game that can seep in and really kind of affect you mentally. Sure. I had the same thing. I played a disc golf tournament last weekend, which is partially why we didn't do a pre-show. And like the first day or the halfway, like we played 2 rounds a day for 2 days, and I look forward to this tournament every year. Like, this is kind of the benchmark tournament. All right, how did we progress this year? And I shit the bed like in the first round. I did so bad, and I was fucking pissed. And it wasn't until like we started the second round, and I was terrible in that. And for the first couple of holes, I was down on myself. It was shitty. I was moody. I had a hissy fit, and then
hissy fit? No.
But then I remembered.
Cheers.
You're missing the point. Like, you're missing the point of being there. The whole point of being there is, first and foremost, to have fun. And like, you love this shit. Like, just be okay with not being good. And it completely changed. I was still bad, but I had fucking way more fun. Cracked a beverage, you know. Started and
as you do.
Yeah, and started playing better, just not good. And I think that kind of mindset is or that ability to be able to pull yourself out of the shit is an important skill to have. I'm terrible at it.
I mean, same sometimes. All right, back to the rankings.
Stop
and going
talking
through
about
teams.
disc golf, Steve, you bum.
Okay, so the second place team, and maybe you guys will agree with me or not when you start hearing some of these lineups, why the top 2 teams finished where they did. So second place team was Team Golden Pony Boy. So Golden Pony Boy is from New York. You had Brew from Detroit and Evil from New York. I mean, Brew might be a Detroit player, but has tons of games in the New York field, so knows it very well. This was the team that also had Disco and Autumn from California, each of them being outstanding in their particular tiers. Like, they were definitely on the border. They could have been ranked in the tier above. And then they had Anchovy from California, who was very new when he came to a Mega Members Night in Loveland. I didn't necessarily have huge expectations for him, just because he's inexperienced and he's much younger than a lot of the other players. But man, he really impressed me throughout the week. His game had gone up leaps and bounds since the Mega Members in Loveland. He really seemed dedicated to taking it seriously, to taking input from his teammates to just building more awareness of the field. So he was a force to be reckoned with by the end of the week. And if you look at the statistical rankings, I think other than Ender, he would definitely significantly outperformed his tier from where he was ranked initially. So he ended up being a real asset to that team. So it was a very strong team. They had a lot of players who were very good at offense. They had a lot of players who were very good at situational awareness. So it was just a deep, stacked kind of team. So I was not at all surprised to see them in the top 2.
Did they have less illness effect?
Yeah, they all stayed pretty healthy throughout the week.
Just looking at the games played, and aside from Evo, it looked like everyone played basically everything.
Yeah, Evil was the only one in that. It unfortunately was the last day, which was finals, but he'd managed to play all the games up to that point.
Damn
and
tendies.
Even after Evil went out, they ended up taking some good subs. I think at one point,
Snuffles and
some of these tiers actually might be a little bit incorrect based on from where I'm looking at them, but I know they had Snuffles subbing for them at one point, and Snuffles is a fantastic player as well. And I think we actually had a tournament first as well, where the team that Britain was on after he went down with an illness, Abby, who's married to him, ended up subbing in. And I'm like, I think this is the first time in Laserforce tournament history we've had one spouse subbing for another. I know we've had obviously situations where spouses have been on the same team, like your guys' Auckland team, with Sneak and Magrat and people like Autumn Aiden, who are a couple have been on same teams lots of times. But yeah, in terms of one person filling in for the other, I'm like that's interesting, and it's fun to see, and it's also just kind of a sign of the times, and going to Syracuse and seeing all the people that I've known for years and years, many of them having their own children now. I mean,
it's so weird.
The next generation of tag players.
So weird.
You took Lenny, blew his ankle out in the second game. Oh man.
Yep.
That's so brutal.
Yeah.
The Cloud's
Lenny played a couple games for us as well, when Cody went down with a slight injury at the end of day 3.
Yeah.
And wanted to make sure, or maybe it was end of day 2. I can't remember which day it was, but he wanted to be fresh for finals. So he sat out a couple of games. Lenny filled in for us and did admirably. But I felt bad for him that he kind of wrecked himself almost as soon as he came back into it.
Poor boy.
Well, as a new dad, he probably had a few other things on his mind as well.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Right.
And then the winning team was Team Assassin from New York. Their tier 1 and 2 players were Kodama and Odin, both from California. But I think of all the teams that came in, these were the two that had the best synergy with each other among the tier 1 and 2 players.
That's fair.
That is probably, I mean, again, I'm biased. This is my perspective, but at least from looking at these, they were on a world championship team together. They obviously work well together. They've been in a lot of situations. They've been in multiple Nats teams together. So they've had a lot of that experience together in the trenches. That's why I think was a major asset to their team. And then they had Alex Boxes and Stealth Elf, both from New York. So they got New York players in their 4th and 5th tiers, which I think was helpful for them, obviously, in having some good experienced players. And then they had Ender, who was the ringer, who played at least 1, if not 2 tiers above where he was ranked, just because we didn't have a lot of knowledge of him coming in. But Ender was incredibly impressive and drew not only a lot of 3-hit games, but drew some critical 3-hit games in finals.
Yeah.
I remember watching one game in finals. He ended up being assigned as the green heavy, and I think Aiden and Kodama gave him maybe a 3 to 5 minute primer before the game about some things to do from green side as heavy. And I was in a position to watch that game as a ref over by the green side. And the way he played heavy from green was absolutely brilliant. It was on par with exactly the way I see all of the great players in Syracuse play heavy, where they're very active, they're moving around the corridors, they're being unpredictable, they're varying their movements, they're catching resets in all kinds of unexpected ways by legally tracking people around corners, doing all kinds of stuff. So it was impressive to see. So I was very impressed with his play. It was a solid team from top to bottom. They really did not have any weak lineups, so they could roll almost anything, and you knew it would still be a very difficult game to play against them. because even if you like rolled Kodama and Odin's Fist as resupply, well, guess what? Now you have a resupply where you have a medic who is very capable of defending themselves and staying out of danger, and an ammo who can basically turn into a third scout. So even if you have like weaker players as your 3 hits, they're gonna make up for a lot of that weakness in those supporting roles. So once I was really not surprised the top 2 teams shook out how they did. Again, they could have gotten bad rolls in finals and gotten eliminated earlier, but if you just asked me, like, if you played this tournament out any number of times, like, I think the top 2 teams were definitely a cut above the others. They deserve to be ranked where they were. The other 4 teams, I think they might have been able to go anyway based on how they rolled in finals. So they were good, closely drawn competitive teams. So that was a really fun format, and it produced some interesting games. And given that we had been knocked into the losers bracket at the end of day 3 and then going into day 4, I was fully prepared to only have 1 match and just end up reffing the rest of the day. And we worked our way all the way up to 3rd.
Nice.
And I'm both happy of that, and I'm proud of my team for the way they handle a lot of situations, because we had some good, intense, interesting games in finals, and they were not pushovers. It's not like we won just because we got favorable rolls. It was like we got kind of mid-strength rolls, but we made up for it with good, solid teamwork, communication, and fundamental play.
Are you kind of taking that that coaching role in that team as well? Like, is that kind of your?
I would say by and large, like, obviously Cody had a lot of input as well, since it is his field and he's a very experienced Syracuse player. But I think just having the number of years experience that I have, I just kind of start gravitating into that role a little bit more. And I knew players like Disco Stew and Grack. Probably I've known them for a much longer period than Cody. So even though he had a lot of field knowledge to impart, some of just like the personnel management and that kind of thing, I think maybe fell a little bit more on my shoulders. But it was a collective effort, and Cody definitely did a lot in helping get our team organized and telling people how to play the field appropriately. And when he had the opportunity, which was not in a ton of games, but when he did get put into like a 3-hit roll or something, did a great job in backpacking us and really spearheading the offense and getting
being the 10-10-9 that he claimed he was.
Yeah, we were all trying to come up with names for the teams, which never really got publicized, but we had decided that our team name was going to be the 10-10-10-10-10-10-9s.
Brilliant. Man, you guys played, between you and him, you played a lot of Scout.
Yes, we did. We had a lot of Scout games.
Yeah.
But that made it interesting because, again, sometimes when you're in that role, you have to shoulder a little bit more of the offensive burden as a Scout, but it's very difficult to break in completely as a Scout in the Syracuse field in particular.
Yeah.
Because there's so many angles where if you take a single hit, right, you're not getting all the way in. So you have to work on your sneakiness and your tactical awareness, on being around your 3 hits in the right locations. So it's a fun field to play all the positions in.
Have you got a preference?
It's a fun field overall. Of positions in that field?
Yeah.
Honestly, it might be one of the few fields where I can say, no, I don't necessarily have a preference.
Yeah.
Like, in thinking about the differing roles, like, I feel that my ammo game is stronger than my medic game in Syracuse. And I oddly feel more comfortable with heavy than commander in Syracuse, but I don't know if the statistics actually back that up.
Right.
So it is what it is.
Yeah. Wow.
I just liked it in that maze. Like, you don't ever have to really bend over. The walls are all tall enough that you can be upright for pretty much all of your movement instead of having to scramble and duck and squat behind walls and things. I'm too old for that shit at this point.
Yeah, well, and that's why for players who have back problems like a Grack or an Oddman or a Disco Stew, I think that it affords them a lot more opportunities. It's a much more, I guess, equitable field in that sense, and that it doesn't necessarily rely on raw physicality the way that some arenas with ramps do.
Yeah.
Loveland particularly, but like I think Brisbane's kind of the same way. Like you got to be in good shape.
Well, that has both.
Play Brisbane.
That's got ramps and it's got low walls, so like you kind of have to be good at both, especially in the resupply. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a tall order.
Yeah. And that's, yeah, I mean, we're in trouble.
Which, I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it's a sport. Physicality makes a difference.
Yeah.
But I do like that there are fields that are friendlier to players who may not have the same types of physical advantages as other players. And it's really good to see that.
Yeah.
And Syracuse is just a fun field overall.
Yeah.
So it's good for everybody. It's one of those things where, yes, good universal design principles are good for everyone.
I kind of wish I played more games there. I've only played like 2, I think, 2 or 3. And even then, I don't think we didn't play Space Marines. It was just random publics because there was only a couple of us there. So
it's a fun field. My only bone to pick with them is that the names that the players have given to various locations in Syracuse, like, they're all very contextual or involve an understanding either of looking at the maze from the top down or from some kind of inside joke about the place, like an area that they call Dime Bag, which is across from the main resupply area on Red Side. They call that because somebody found a dime bag in the arena. Like, there was nothing about the location itself that would suggest anything about that name. And likewise, they have a place called Teacup, which makes sense if you look at it on the map from the top down. But if you're just wandering in the arena, there's no kind of indication for that. So it's like,
yeah.
I feel like it would be nicer or easier if in some way we came up with names that were a little bit easier to reference just from a visual cue. But then again, it's a creative works arena that is very mazy. So it's like there's not necessarily always a lot of very obvious visual standouts. And then the walls are painted in just kind of a general astronomical phenomenon type of thing. So you could say, hey, they're at the quasar, they're at Jupiter, but if people don't know what our quasar or Jupiter look like, that's not going to help them at all. So. At least stuff like EDOR makes sense because it's where the emergency doors are.
Right.
So so EDOR and E50, which is an emergency exit that's at the halfway point of the field. So it's like 50% of the 50-yard line or whatever. Like, that makes sense. Where are they? Well, they're in the middle. They're the 50% mark, or they're by the exit door.
Yeah.
So those things are easy enough. But some of the other areas, like, I don't. Why do you call it foxhole or cuckoo's nest or what? Like, that does. Okay, I guess that's just what it's called. But like, help me out here. Paint a cuckoo on there.
There are 4 sets of doors with emergency exit over them in that arena. That's so funny.
Yeah. Okay. It's the E-door for the entire building, not just for the arena. It's the one that makes the loud boom if you open it.
Make more loud go boom. So I guess do you have like some final remarks or
well, Beans did post stuff like the All-Star and Individual Awards in the tournaments group on Facebook. So we don't need to go over all those, but you would not be surprised to learn that the All-Star team consisted of Evil, Brew, Slaughtermelon, Beans, Kodama, and Odin. So all people who were in the top 2 tiers, all phenomenal players. The criteria for it was you had to play at least 4 games in that position. So there were lots of players who just weren't eligible for one position or another.
Right.
But I don't think you can quibble with that as an All-Star team. Those are all very capable, very good players. So, I mean, whatever else you want to say about the MVP system, the rankings, the way they were done, 9 of the 12 players who are ranked in tiers 1 and 2 did finish in the top 12 of people in MVP in the tournament. Take that for what you will. MVP isn't perfect. Everybody knows it. If you want to listen to the other podcast that the 11 guys did, they had a pretty long discussion about it. But it was interesting listening to that, that 2 things kind of stood out. That one was about underrated players, and a lot of what I was talking about with Disco and Autumn specifically, that they're kind of chronically underrated. And especially after all that subbing and making wonderful merchandise, you better put some respect on Autumn's name. Keep Autumn's name out your damn mouth if you're not going to show some respect. But it's one of those things that I think it's become like such a long running thing that it's like these players are underrated, they're underrated. Like, if you're constantly saying that people are underrated, are they still underrated? Yeah. Or it's just like that? Obviously, that means that they're a solid player. When you call someone underrated, that's meant to be kind of a compliment to them, right? That it's like, well,
but also, why doesn't
what people expect? But yeah, it's also kind of like a backhanded insult in some ways. That it's like, well, other people think that you're trash, but I know that you're good. So I think it's getting to the point where a lot of people are kind of more properly rated. But and I've, like I said, I've told Autumn this to her face many times. The only reason that I don't think that she's ascended to the ranks of like elite players is purely a physical limitation thing.
Yeah.
Being disabled sucks, but it's like there's no easy fix for that. She's already had spinal fusion surgery. What else is she supposed to do to become a better player?
Yeah.
Like if you can't bend in an arena, there's only so much that you're going to do.
Yeah.
But I love that there are events like this where she still plays and she does really well.
Yeah. So underrated.
Yeah. So that was one thing that I'm just like, yeah, if everybody thinks somebody's underrated, then it's like, are they underrated? Everybody thinks they're good. So now
Yeah.
maybe they're properly rated.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with like a discussion of MVP of like, well, MVP isn't the be all end all, but like, I think literally everybody says that. And anytime that I talk to them, and people, but it's true. People do have varying opinions about how useful MVP is as a metric for things. How much stock should you put in it versus other things? But if you're going to ask me that, it's like, in general, did the MVP rankings kind of like get it right, essentially with the tier 1 and 2 players? I think it's pretty close. I think if you look at the number of people who played the tournament and you look at who the top 12 were, I don't think it's real controversial. I don't really see a big case for moving people from the lower tiers into those top 2, but maybe people have different opinions, and that's fine. Differences of opinions are expected.
Well, I think, I mean, I know we've had this discussion before, ad nauseum on like multiple podcasts in the past, but if MVP was only ever supposed to be a way to get ballpark rankings. It was never, it's never been intended to be a be all / end all, because there are things that you just cannot quantify into numbers.
Yeah.
And I feel like at this point, like most people are, that's how they're looking at MVP. Is they're looking at it as, okay, we're getting a relative ranking here, and then from there we can decide if there's intangibles that the player brings in certain scenarios that may either rank them up or rank them down. Like,
it's a measure of a certain kind of mechanical skill.
Yeah.
But mechanical skill isn't everything. Well, I've always made the point that I believe, and this is partly because I've helped to like offer input on what should be considered for MVP over the years. So yes, I have some stake in that process. But my philosophy and my thinking has always been, if you play good, sound, fundamental laser tag where you're doing the things that you're supposed to do at your position, the stats will eventually bear that out over time. Like you will see increases to your statistical yields. However, at the same time, and I say this about a lot of things in life, we should remember in statistics, it's called Goodhart's law, that when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a useful measure.
Right.
If you are altering your play to try to build more MVP, and that is what you're basing your game around, that is probably going to be a disservice, because that means you're no longer organizing your game around what are good fundamental sound plays. You're building it around, how can I juice the system to make myself look like an effective player by tallying up all these points.
I don't think people do that though.
I don't think they do it too much, but I feel like there are certain, I don't even want to say certain players, but there are people who have certain tendencies that it's like they will make a move because they know this is what's supposed to be done in order to get a better statistical outcome. I mean, I don't think there are a lot of players who build their games around that. I would offer that as a benchmark for newer players to say, don't do something because it gives you MVP points. Do something because it's good for your team and it's good for the situation that calls for it. And if you do those things, right, the stats will bear it out over time.
I think,
but it might not bear it out in any one game. Like I've had plenty of games where I might have only gotten like 12 MVP points, but that was what was needed in that situation because I happened to be playing heavy that game and I just had to defend the whole game. So I didn't get a lot of missiles. I didn't get a lot of medic hits, but I kept my medic from dying. Was that more valuable? Yeah, in that moment it kind of was. But then I'm going to have other heavy games where I'm expected to carry the offense, and I got 8 medic hits and I got all 5 missiles off, so I got like 27 points that game. So sure, even it out over time if you're kind of like slowly building up. So in general, I think that if people are like in the range of, if you're in the range of like 20 MVP, you're an excellent player.
Yeah.
Like there's no counter argument in my mind that if someone is consistently averaging like 20 MVP points plus, or they're like in that ballpark, I don't think you can really say, no, that player isn't that good, or they're not as good as people think they are. I'm like, well, they kind of are, because like that, if you have a large enough sample size, that's obviously a good player. Maybe they have other weaknesses that aren't borne on the stats, but they obviously are capable of playing the game at a very high level.
That's kind of why I think it's important to have the player voted awards next to MVP awards, because that kind of sometimes is the counterbalance to that, right? Like people who do things that don't necessarily show up in the stats, but have massive impact on the game, like things like directing a backline as a heavy. Like if you're stuck in the resupply that whole game, but you're directing traffic, and you basically become a wall. People notice that stuff. So and stats, they're not arbitrary, but they're not the whole picture.
They always require contextualization.
Yeah, they're the outlines, but the shading is not necessarily there. Boom.
Yeah, I honestly,
Smart.
How many different analogies are we gonna make, Steve?
They're like the pasta sauce, but you still need the spaghetti.
I mean, honestly, it just kind of occurred to me now, but I've been thinking about it since I listened to the Loveland recap podcast they did. We could probably have a whole other show, and maybe we wouldn't even consider joining forces, having some of those Loveland
No
folks on
way.
to talk about what some of those intangibles are, because there are definitely things, there are intangibles that are out there that I thought a lot about this week.
Yeah.
When I was looking at players who are closely ranked, where I'm just like, why do I think that this player is better than this player, even though statistically they're very similar? I'm like, okay, here's other things that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So stuff like communication, stuff like tactical awareness, stuff like ability to support teammates in different situations.
Attitude.
Attitude, kind of like mental toughness in dealing with adversity. Those are all things that don't show up in the stat sheet that are obviously very important for player evaluations. Because like, I think about the way that my team talked in the run-up to the 2023 Auckland Nats. We had pretty much weekly team meetings. Almost none of it was about mechanical skill or like how to play the game, like how to do the things that fill up the stat sheet. We know all that shit.
Yeah.
Like we're all veteran players, been playing for years, and we've all been highly rated players for years. We needed to focus on what are the other things that are going to get us to the next level. How do we integrate as a unit? All of us can play the game. All of us probably could have played any position, but how do we maximize what our advantages are? And how do we like coordinate as a unit and not just 6 individually very good players?
Yeah, exactly right. Doing an intangibles discussion. Certainly, I'm surprised we haven't done one. Surely we've done one at one point, but
I feel like I feel like we've done it in the context of previous MVP discussions,
right?
Because
back to the well, baby.
Yeah, content is evergreen.
Well, I mean,
that content is evergreen.
It is evergreen in the sense that the player base continues to change and continues to evolve. And so, it's not the worst thing in the world to go back to the well and kind of, have those discussions again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just easy content.
Yeah. Lazy.
Efficient.
Sorry, efficient.
Well, sometimes it is also interesting to see how stuff has changed over time. If maybe you have a different opinion than you had 2 or 3 years ago, whenever we probably last did this topic, like have you discovered other intangibles? Have you reordered in your head what things are most important?
Working needs.
Well, that is important.
Those
At least for me, I think that I really value at a very high level now the ability to relay information and communicate with your team effectively in a game even higher than I used to. I've always thought that's important, but I think it's important enough that is probably where I'm drawing some of my conclusions about where players should be moved up or down in a tier, is like but how good are they at communicating with their teammates and facilitating communication between members of the team? Because that, especially when you have these narrow margin games that are on razor thin kind of events, if you can get those elims that revolve on calling out where that last person is, tracking them effectively, and finishing off the game, that's massive. That could be the difference between winning and losing a match in so many situations. So
lack of communication just bugs the shit out of me. It's
yeah.
If
you have too much organizational chaos, the whole edifice collapses.
Oh fuck off. I mean, well done. But
speaking of going back to the well.
Yeah, if there's too much chaos, then the whole flan just caves in, and it's not light and airy. Okay. Knowledge. Right. What else? What else is there? We sort of gone through standings. Did you have a good time?
I did. I had a great time. I think Bruce said it in chat earlier, but in terms of just being like a event that perfectly balanced the kind of social for funsies type event with just a little bit of competition in there, because anytime you're going for any kind of ranking or trophies or anything like that, it's just that little bit of that competitive instinct kicks in. Like you want to win, and you want to win in a way that's different from wanting to win a game on a social night. Because it's like winning is cool, but you're just there to hang out with people, have a good time. So I like having just a little bit at stake in these events, but I think it kind of perfectly hit that sweet spot where everybody was in good spirits. Everybody was playing in the spirit of the event. People were helping the newer players. People were socializing. People were having a good time and just hanging out. So I think it was a great event from that perspective. I think it really did have the perfect mix of competitiveness, but also camaraderie in the event. So I'd love to see more events like that.
Do you think that's a mindset from the player base going in? Like,
I think that has something to do with it, because I mean, he's the one who brought it up. So it's like, and Brew and I had this discussion during the week about like when that competitive fire sometimes gets a little bit too hot. And I had the same conversation with Caleb about some of the things that Nats was a different beast. And even though it wasn't an uncivil Nats, especially not in comparison to some of the real horror stories we've had in the past, but still, like, stuff got really intense, and you could definitely kind of like feel some of the tension at various times. And I'm not necessarily saying that's a bad thing at a Nats. Nats is the highest level of competition.
Yeah.
If you're not getting some butterflies in your stomach, if you're not like trying to just squeeze every bit of intensity out, like that's kind of part of what we're going for also. But you can't operate that way every day.
No.
I mean, I certainly can. I have clinical anxiety, for fuck's sake. Like, it's just not a healthy way to live. So you want to take it in small doses, but I like this kind of event where it's most about the camaraderie, but you're still playing for something.
Yeah.
You're playing. You still want your team to do well. Anytime that I find myself where it's like you're playing with the same people, you're on a team. Once you call something a team, like I'm gonna take it more seriously.
Yeah.
And that's like when I had my little like my lowest moment of the week was at the end of, I think it was the end of day 3, because it was the beginning of finals. We had a game where I was playing against Jackal's team, and it was a close game. I was playing commander. I got a nuke toward the end of the game, but there were people missing from both sides. I got my nuke canceled like right at the last second, and it was we still ended up winning the game. So I was like, well, shit, that sucked to get that nuke canceled, but at least we still won the game, until I came out and discovered / was told that, oh, if that nuke actually detonated, you would have eliminated the rest of their team. They had 4 people left. They were all on 3 lives or less.
Rough.
And at that point I was just like, oh. But I started getting in my own head, because it's one thing that's like, okay, I'm disappointed that I got my nuke canceled. That's whatever. But what gets me into the really stinging feeling is feeling like I let my team down.
Yeah.
And if I feel like I let my team down, that's when I really start to just start crumpling inside. And why there's like it's not going to be effective for another teammate to tell me that I screwed up. Trust me, nobody knows I fucked up more than I did. Like nobody needs to add any fuel to that fire. Like I need in a lot of cases, I need that teammate who's going to lift me back up and be like, keep your head up. It happens. We'll move on to the next game. We'll keep that going. But knowing those kinds of things, like how are people going to respond to different situations, Do they need to be pushed, or do they need a pat on the back?
Yeah.
Like that's a tough thing, but that's true of all areas of life. That's how why leadership is a controversial subject. Why these idiots get paid $200,000 to give a speech about leadership to a bunch of fucking douchebags in some room somewhere. Anyway. But right, like that's how important those kinds of things are, is knowing how to manage people, knowing how to manage emotions, knowing how to manage yourself and other people.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, if it was easy, everyone would do it.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I mean, between the three of us, we've been on enough teams together in various combinations over the years that we have all had those conversations with each other.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say there are never moments where I need to be called out and told that, hey, you need to do this better.
Yeah.
And,
like, okay, sometimes that works, but.
And I have. That's
But
accurate.
when you're aware of what went wrong, it's just, Yeah. That was definitely a low moment, but, I came around, we played another game. I had to take my hat off because Britain played it brilliant. Like, that's the thing with these knife's edge type events, that it can be a low moment for somebody else. It could be a brilliant play for another person. But that's always the beauty of sports, right? For every buzzer beater, there's also a chase down block that happens. And it's like, it's amazing if the person who blocks the shot ain't so great for the person who misses that layup.
Yeah.
Like, that's a pretty low moment.
Well, it sounds like a pretty bloody successful tournament.
It was. And I want to extend a special thanks to Beans for organizing the event, to the other co-hosts who helped to rank people, and of course for Sanch for hosting us.
Oh, yeah.
Because we don't have a whole lot of places that we can play, and there's not a lot of owners who are willing to just open their facility and basically let us have the run of it for 4 days.
Did he play?
And it was great he did not play, but he was around a lot during the week, so I had a good chance to talk to him. We went out to dinner a couple of nights. Like on the third night, we went out to Tully's basically as a huge group and just had a good old time. After play concluded, we went to Cheesecake Factory and we had a number of different tables. And it was, for me, it was a really good, and it was a very kind of special moment because at my table, it was me, Baden, Caleb, Kadama, Beans, and Sanch. So
nice
people that I've known for a long time, people I've been on very important competitive teams with, and just people I've known in cases like in the 10 to 15 year range. And we just all were kind of sitting around having a nice conversation. And like all those people are adults with their own lives and a lot of things going on. People are moving on to different things. So it was good just to have that kind of just being people and not just tag players with one another, and having like some nice food, nice companionship, nice drinks.
Wait, hang on. You mean we're actually all human beings? Wait, what?
Well,
crazy.
Dude, it's great. Like I had this conversation with Mental.
The human effect, as they would have said on the other show.
I had this conversation with Mental the other day, and I was actually both him and me were kind of explaining to his partner like the camaraderie and the social aspect is the reason that we play this game for so long, and the reason that we still, after decades, are still friends, from across the globe. We might not see each other for 2 decades almost, but it's those moments at tournaments that really solidify those friendships, and that's why I harp on about it every single year. But that's why it's so important to do social stuff during these tournaments, because that's where the friendships are forged. Like, you have mutual respect from a competitor's standpoint, but those moments of, we went and we like, I don't know, went on a walk together, or we like went fishing, or like, we went,
or we all stayed at the same caravan park.
Like that stuff, that's what forges those friendships. So I'm glad to see that kind of stuff still happening pretty much at every tournament that happened. So that's awesome. It's really, really cool. Hashtag flashbacks. All right, let's
one final
oh
story before we go. So this is just another shout out to Sanch and some brilliant what I would call either MacGyvering or redneck engineering, depending on your persuasion. Is that we did have a little problem in one section of the arena that they do not regularly use the heater there. So when they turn the heat back on and try to get the arena a little bit more comfortable temperature for everybody who was in there, when it cycled off, it was spitting out some condensed water onto the floor, making a little wet spot outside of one of the critical areas near red side. That was not so great. For a couple of games, we had to block it off to players. It completely changed the dynamic of the field, and suddenly red side was not nearly as good as it used to be. So on, I think it was the third day, I was there. I wouldn't say that I helped. I held the ladder for Sanj. That doesn't really count as helping. But Sanj was up there with a big garbage can and a number of straps with hooks and like the what do you call them? The little ratchet sets that you have on straps for lasers, where you just kind of like wind them and stuff like that. Yeah. So some ratchet straps with hooks. So we just hoisted up this garbage can. So it was sitting directly under the heating unit. It looked like we were setting up some kind of trap for the Home Alone burglars. And it's just like, okay, when somebody comes into Bumblebee, pull the ripcord and we'll drop the water on their head. And then the garbage can will fall on them. And then we'll bury the commander underneath the garbage can. It's going to be a very hilarious Rube Goldberg type device. But that was cool. And I could hear it when I was reffing. Basically, every time the heater would cycle off, you just hear this drip, 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 and it was all falling in the garbage can. So
genius.
That was fucking genius right there. So good on you, Sanch.
Like dealing with problems like a man, fashioning a trap to capture the water so that we don't go thirsty.
I'm quite certain it did not meet any OSHA regulations, but it got the job done. We're all at the tournament of our own volition, so.
All right, we're gonna get the heck out of here. There is currently a football game happening, which I might jump into the sports lounge if anyone wants to come and watch the Detroit-Washington game. We'll hang out there for a little while and watch some football. Football. I'm glad you guys had a good time. I'm glad that it sounds like a great tournament. I hope the East Coast tournaments especially, but I hope the ECT, WCT comps continue because I think they're really important for the US scene. I wish we had something like that here. It's a little bit trickier to kind of travel internationally every time we kind of look to do some of those. Plus, when it's just two sites, then it's a little.
I think it's still shorter for you to get to Brisbane than it is for me to get to Syracuse.
Oh, definitely, 100%. And it's easy for me, but everyone else apparently it's a struggle. So, but yeah, we turn an eye towards Laserforce Internationals 2025, which will be in Brisbane this year. There is a lot of fun stuff that's taking place in and around the tournament this year. Tournament's going to be great, but there are some really fun off the field activities. The LFDGA competition that will be played the weekend after the tournament. At some point, our good friend Frosthammer will be doing a live stand-up set in Brisbane, which I would love to get the community to go and
heckle him.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Apparently
you're not wrong.
They've got a gong. They have a gong there that they ring. They smash the gong when somebody bombs and they have to get off the stage before their 5 minutes is up. I really hope that somebody hits the gong, because we've told them you don't get to end early. Even if you're shit, that gong goes, you're stuck up there for a good 5 minutes. So it's either going to be hilarious or painful. Either way, it's going to be great.
Both.
Yeah.
There are two great thrills of live performances: when it is a magical, top quality experience, and when somebody just really bombs. They're both thrills. They're just completely different types of thrills.
There's going to be dinners out. Hopefully, we're going to look to obviously be at the same holiday park again. So there'll be lots of, during the week, board games, video games, Jackbox sessions. The whole week's going to be frickin' sweet. So if you haven't looked at tickets yet, what'd you say? Cocktails. Oh, yeah. Yeah, there might be some cocktails. Dude, I've gotten very good at making old fashions. So that might be the goal for the week. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the first show of the year. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. We missed doing this, which is why we moved it to a Sunday, which everyone knows is Jesus' day for podcasts. So thank you to him for sharing his time slot for us, I guess.
Thank you to all the tournament players from Random Draw,
Yep.
ECT. I hope all of you who are sick and or injured feel better soon. Since I fall into both those categories, I'm hoping I feel better soon.
Thank you to the other podcast, which is almost as good as ours, but is definitely not as good. You guys will get there one day.
For fuck's sake.
Shots fired!
This is so much better. But on that note, I've been Guy Next Door.
I've been very old DK.
And I've been very older than.
Always remember to backtrack, kids. Let's go watch some football.
Football.
Football. What's the button? The button. There we go. Go get that.